Cool. Okay. Well, so we're here with Adam Cruz. Earlier this week, we did a standouts with Sam Wake, which is really cool, and it's cool to have two in 1 week. So the point of standouts is to meet with cool people and talk about differentiation and positioning, standing out, and just what that journey's look like for various ventures and projects. And today I'm meeting with Adam Cruz, and it's just really exciting to be here right now. Adam's been a good friend of mine for many years, and he's done so many cool things, and we've kind of cheered each other on in our journey over the last decade or more, and it's just been cool. So anyway, I'm excited about today. If you're joining for the first time, we're just going to be having a discussion. Please tune in, and I know you'll get a lot of value out of the conversation. So thanks. So anyway, Adam, if you want to just kind of share your background, a little snapshot of who you are, I think that would be awesome.
Nice. Yeah, Josh, this is awesome, man. Glad to finally do this with you. It's been awesome actually watching some of the past standouts. So amazing people, cool stories, and I think that's what I'm interested in mostly, is just like people's stories where everybody's interesting and has interesting nuance to their journey. There's this saying, like, you get to where you are honestly, and sometimes I wonder where I am and how I got there, and it's a journey. And so anyways, excited to be at this moment with you and chatting. And today's world looks like running a design team at Intuit, and I work on some fun projects in our worker prosperity space, and really helping workers of small businesses thrive financially. And it's been a fun journey running an awesome team there. And prior to that, I spent a few years with Adam Metcalf, who's also been on standouts here, and helping build Zeme, and the awesome journey in Zeme and ed tech space, and building a new app, and really cutting our teeth, and not knowing a lot, and just trying a lot of things, and seeing what works, and pivoting a lot. And then prior to that, I was in nonprofit space, specifically in the church space as a pastor and creative director, and so kind of been all over in terms of creative conduit, I guess, creative canvases. But sort of the theme or umbrella of all of it has been a design theme or a creative theme, which I think has evolved now to more like strategy and business development and business strategy, but still through a design lens. But that's kind of a little bit about me in a snapshot.
Yeah. So what do you think from going from starting up a church, because you were there with like 4 people in a living room, and it grew to like, I don't know what it was, 1,500 or is, in a really, really rapid way, going from that to then working remote, moving to Silicon Valley, growing that company, and just working through that whole process with raising funds, and then going to Intuit, or T-Sheets, I guess.
Yeah.
And then as that transformed into Intuit, and those of you that don't know, I guess Intuit, QuickBooks, I think, is probably their flagship thing. I know they do a lot more than that, but a lot of small business owners, I think, know Intuit via QuickBooks. But what's kind of been, you shared a little bit just now, but what do you think is a common thread or a theme, maybe not within the organizations, but just the way you were positioned, I guess, inside of these? What was kind of your seemed to be your purpose in those the organizations you've been a part of?
Yeah, when I think back to the beginning days of Element, and obviously Jeff Manis was a phenomenal leader, and a fantastic sort of vision for what Element could be. It was just him and I and a couple other guys trying to figure out what a new church could look like. I think the theme for us, like when I look back on my life, the theme across all those things was our obsession with the customer And for us as a church, it was like the people coming, the people investing their time. And, I remember a time when we all got in a car and
I was hoping you were going to tell this story. I was actually going to bring this story up. So this is like empathy right here. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite.
Learned about this.
One of my favorite moments is, we've been doing the church for a year or so. We just gotten into a new building, and growth is great when you're mature and ready for it. Growth is dangerous when you're not. And so there was a lot to learn we were all growing up and growing, literally, mobs and mobs of people every week. And so we needed systems, and we needed ways that, like, we needed to define how we best serve people. And I would say the conversation never changed from day one to that day to, I would assume, to today, which is like, where are people at, and what do they need, and how do we meet that need? And so when you think that way, it like, there's a lot of churches. People can go to a ton of churches. But I think what made us unique was, I think people found themselves represented. They found themselves like seen through the leader's eyes, that we were on their level. We were in their shoes. We weren't just trying to sell them on something. We were literally with them. And so one of my favorite stories is, we all jumped into a car, and we were a few miles away from the church. And we literally drove in the car, and we pretended we were kids, and pretended somebody was a spouse and somebody was driving, and we're fighting on the way to church, because that's what you do. And to this new church, and you've never been before. And so one of the things we did as we were driving is we'd start asking each other questions, and literally writing them down. Like, what are you thinking about? Like, it's a brand new church. What am I thinking about? And at this point, we're a couple miles away. So you're thinking about, like, what's it going to be like? If I've got kids, where do my kids go? And you're just imagining sort of these things that matter to you as a person that's trying to decide, is this the place? Am I going to go here? And so we drove all the way up, and you get to the parking lot, and, there's a ton of cars because we're growing. And so what's parking like when it's chaotic? How do we make sure it's not chaotic? How do we make sure it's peaceful? And you walk through the doors, and what does it look like to go from your cars to the door? And do you know where the door is? Like, do you know how to get to the door? And then when I walk into the door, everything's new. So you just kind of look around, you're like, what am I seeing? I've got kids, I want to get them somewhere. Maybe I'm even late, like, things have already started. And it's so delightful to be met there by a friendly face that's like, let me help you out. And they take you, to a place where you can put your kids safely, and your kids get checked in, and you feel good about that. And what's that experience like? Nobody wants to put their kids in a crappy experience. So what's that experience like? And all of the, like, just using the church analogy, and not everybody listening understands maybe that analogy, but bear with me, it applies to businesses. Like, at the end of the day, we want to, like, we think our most important thing is one thing. Maybe it's the sermon or worship, the worship experience or whatever. And what you realize is, like, there was like 9 touch points before those people ever sat in a seat and listened to anything you had to say. And those 9 touch points impacted whether they will ever come back or not. So if you get them wrong, they won't come back. If you get them right, they potentially come back, and not only come back, but they bring somebody with them, and they champion them. They become your champions. And so we would embed ourselves, like, even like, I'm sitting in the service, maybe it hasn't started yet. What's the music like? And you can overthink a lot of those things and miss the point. But I think that obsession led us to understand, like, what is it like to be new? What is it like to be checking out a church? Like, church shopping's terrible. But what's that like? And what's it like to find a home and a place to belong? Anyways, yeah. And so, when I left Element, it was amazing, because I'd spent 7 years there, and then realized, as I was moving more into product design and UX, and I was reading blogs and books about all of this, I realized that all this language, I wasn't calling it this stuff, but it's like all this language we had been practicing, just in a different environment. So it applies across many, narratives,
So
really just, yeah.
yeah, no, it's really good. I was just going to ask, like, if we pause and look at that chapter and look at this, let's just say the strategy that Element, had. What do you think? What do you think positioned that organization to do as well as it did amidst it's brand new, there's no one there, no one knows anyone in Cheyenne really at that point, there's hundreds of churches, like, what do you think, if you could kind of anchor on, the strategy, that Element position, and there's a lot of churches that believe similar things, so sans the belief structure, I guess I'd say, what do you think is the approach that, the things like you went through just now, that really positioned Element to say, hey, we're different? Like, what made Element different in that approach, you think?
I think what people are craving is something real, and they want something authentic, and they want something real. And I think we get a lot of fabricated messages in our life, products, businesses, whatever. Before we ever launched, and this is credited to Jeff and his ability to sort of craft a vision and a narrative, and then we partnered really well to execute intentionally. And I think, like, we were just on a call a little while ago talking about, I was just reflecting on how intentional we were with every decision that we made and everything that we did. It was very intentional. And so a couple of things we did very intentionally. Before we ever launched, we wanted to be known as a church that if we were gone, the community would miss us. That was the vision. So that seems really weird because most people want churches out, or, like, what would make a church be missed in a community? And the way we defined that was that we wanted to serve our city so well that there would be a hole if we were gone. Like, we wanted to lead with serving. So before we ever launched, we did a gas buy down where we bought the price of gas down at a gas station by $1, and thinking a few people would show up and we'd get to hand out some invite cards. Several hundred people showed up, and the news came and did this, like, we got this like free press. We didn't even reach out. What are you guys doing? Who buys the price of gas down? And and so we realized, like, that's how we will differentiate. We will differentiate by serving. While most churches are saying, come to us, what if we actually went to them? And so everything we did was through that lens, and that changed so much for how people showed up. Like, I want to be a part of that. I can join into that. That's not just about 4 or 5 people. It's about like an army. So they wanted to join in. One other thing we did from a marketing standpoint that was interesting, I don't know if it worked. I like to think it did. We bought a bunch of billboards all over the city. And it was kind of everybody, like, a lot of churches were telling us we were pretty, like, that's dumb. Like, put your church logo on there and your name and your, time. And I was like, nah, that'll get, like, people won't even pay attention to that. So I bought a domain called don'tmissit.cc. And I just bought all these billboards throughout Cheyenne, and they were just black. And all it said is don't miss it. And it had the URL don'tmissit.cc. And then we gave it all our people shirts and invite cards and restaurants. It was interesting, like, hearing the buzz of, like, you're not even asking people, and you'd hear people walking through the Walmart, like, have you seen that Don't Miss It stuff or whatever? And people were checking out, the website and stuff. And again, I don't know if it like how big of a role it played, but we always tried to do it differently than everybody else was. And, we had 200 people at our opening day, where most probably, I have a few. So it was really an interesting way to go about it. So
yeah, well, a few things that kind of stand out from what you shared here a little bit is just like, three things stand out, which I think is cool, is growth is really good if you're ready for it, and growth is really dangerous if you're not. And I think that transcends kind of all things in life, And so many times I think as operators and business people, it's like, oh, we need to grow. And what I've learned over the years, it's like, and I think maybe you opened up with something, we get what we deserve or something. I can't remember exactly the way you phrased it, but you know, when I explain SEO to people, I say those that deserve it get SEO rank. And so you have to figure out how to deserve it, because Google is trying to weed out those that don't deserve it. And they don't want to serve up something that's of no value to their customers. If Google doesn't work well for us, then we're not going to use Google anymore. So their algorithm's important, you know. But I think the growth thing is really cool. The other is a differentiator from the church perspective is a lot of churches, and I would bet a lot of people have experienced this. It's like, they're like, come to our building, come to our building, come to our building, come to our building. And for your guys' perspective, like, how do we go to them? How do we go to the people and spend time with the people out in the community? Which I think is really cool. And then the other one that stood out, as you were just kind of sharing, is, you know, we think that the product is the sermon. Like, as long as the sermon's good, everything is good. And yet the funnel, right? The experience that people have, you know, from the parking lot to the door, to the greeter, to the, you know, where the kids go, to the way they walk into the bulletin, to whatever. That's true in someone's website. That's true in sales process. That's true, all that stuff. And actually, the Peter Drucker quote that I just love is, everything you do, marketing is everything you do from the customer's point of view. And so at the end of the day, a lot of people forget that, like how fast you respond to an email, your email signature, your mood, your vibe, like the way you communicate, the words you choose to use, how you honor the conversation, all those things are important. And that's a, you know, that aggregates into the overall, like, will I come back? Will I be loyal to this company, you know, to this product? And that's all important parts. Anyway, those are just a few of the things that, like, as you're sharing, really stand out to me. If you have any comments on those, feel free. Otherwise, it'd be great to get into Zemi too. So
no, we can jump into Zemi, and maybe it's sort of the same narrative in a lot of ways. You know, it's like you sort of, there where you are, what is the saying? There you are, I guess. I can't remember. I'm butchering the saying, but you know, you take with you, you build on who you are, you build on where you are, but you bring all that with you as well, and that can be really good. But you're also trying to grow and adapt. And okay, what didn't work at my last season, and how do I want to think about this next season as we scale? And so, you know, coming into Zemi, it was one of the things that I brought with me was this obsession for people, this obsession. Like, if you don't start with customer, then all you have is your own opinions and ideas, and sometimes you get lucky, most of the time you won't, and you really have to think about, like, what does it look like to understand our customers? And you know, I don't know if Adam talked a lot about it in his session, but you know, one of the things that we did so early on in Zemi's days is literally taking designs to the high school and, like, getting feedback and getting ideas and brainstorming with our users. I ran a lot of design sessions where I'd actually bring students in and have them design our new features and new products and new ideas. And so that was one of the things that kind of came from that, like, drive in the car, you know, and pull into the parking lot. And it's like, how do we actually bring our users along as we design experiences? You know, users don't always know what they want, right? They'll tell you one thing, but what they really need is something else. But I think there's an important, I guess, in our experience with Zemi, is when you stay close to the customer and what the needs really are, then I think you can go far.
Well, and it's important to your point, it's important to look for patterns, like one-off anecdotal conversation with a high schooler doesn't mean you base your entire app on, like, you know, Jimmy, the 15-year-old, that says your logo sucks. You know, it's like, okay, there's Jimmy's perspective. But if we hear from a lot of, you know, John and Frank and whatever, you know, it's like, and they all say the logo sucks, and okay, maybe we're seeing something, you know. And I think that's a critical part, is using discernment to say, like, what data do we need to pay attention to?
And it's not always, I think sometimes too, people obsess over, like, I think this is where we get it wrong. Like, we say, come listen to my sermon, and that's the point. And I think we do that in product too. We're like, come look at my design, as if my design's the point, or my design is right even, or my idea, my product idea is right. And I think when we listen to customers, almost agnostically of our design, we have a phrase at Intuit called "Follow Me Homes," and Scott Cook, the founder of Intuit, has this amazing story. When he first started Intuit, he literally would watch people buy, I think it's Quicken at the time, and he would ask if he could go to their house and if he could watch them install it on their computer, like super awkward. And he would watch them like use it and get frustrated and try to do other things. And I think when we just like watch people do what they already do, they're already telling us they're already like revealing the themes of what they need by just looking at behavior. But if you're not looking at customer and staying close to customer, you're obsessed with your idea and your point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually, I don't know if this summarizes some of that, but the illness that inventors can kind of have, if not careful, is you can create a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I made this thing. It's like, what does that solve? And I think when you stay close to the customer and you pay attention and you listen and you ask questions, and, you don't get in their way by trying to help them install it, right? Like, it would be bad if, did you say his name was Scott?
Scott, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be bad if like partway and he goes, no, you're supposed to click this button.
Yeah,
like that'd be a terrible way to gather data,
Yep.
But to actually watch and be like, oh, there's a frustration there, and then be like, okay, we need to make this better.
Yeah. And that even started, I mean, it even like the idea for Intuit, it started just by watching his wife do accounting in their home. And he's like, there's got to be a better way. And so again, just observing behavior led to like this great, obviously, innovation that we have here 30 years later. So
yeah.
But yeah, Zimi was an interesting season of like, believing in the mission, and how do you translate mission into like a noble mission into like a meeting a need, and then how do you scale that and build a team around that. So it's like, again, just sort of a growth story, and the themes, there's some similar themes, but some of the things that I kind of took away from our Zimi season was really the importance of our team, and how important like a team is, and how you invest in a team and how you build a team that can really make or break, a product in a business. And every company has its ups and downs in team development and how it builds teams. Some of the earliest days of Zimi was just Adam and Juwan and Pete and I just loving what we were doing and falling in love with, again, the customer and the mission. And I think that team camaraderie can take you, far, and it's important to protect that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think as leaders, it's I don't know. We could probably talk about team stuff a lot. I'm trying to think how to best talk about it. I guess what I would say is a good thing to think about is the company is made up of the people. And I've always said that if we believe that everyone has something unique to offer the world, if you come with that sort of posture, I guess, and belief, then when you take unique people and you add them together and you put them into a company and you put them in a room and say, hey, let's go create something of value. To me, even if you offer the exact same product, there's opportunities for positioning and differentiation because every person can bring something unique to the table.
Yeah.
And I think
some of the most successful teams there's been research done on this. Some of the most successful teams in innovation come from diversity and diversity of thought and experience, not from sameness.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and I think tying back to what you were just talking about, a really important step in positioning and differentiation both externally as you look at the customer and internally as you look at your team, is observing. And I think it's really easy for especially ego-driven, CEOs or founders to kind of forget the listen part, or to forget the observation part, and to really pay attention. And I think, again, a Peter Drucker quote that I really like, I think is something along the lines like, the key to communication is to listen for what's not being said. And I think that's a critical part on team dynamics. It's like reading the room and seeing where people are at emotionally and being able to meet them where they are. And because if you don't honor that person, it's really difficult to get their potential unlocked, and that potential inside of a company is what can really allow you to be more effective. And I think the same is to be said in the customer. If you don't have respect for their way, let's just say, for the way they do things, and you think, well, that's stupid, why would you click that box? You must be an idiot, you need to click this box. It's like, well, you're the idiot that put the box in the wrong way that no one wants to click. You know what I mean? Like, it's not them doing it wrong, it's you're not making something that's intuitive. So I just love that word observe as you were kind of talking about it, because I think it's critical to good positioning, because you have to know what the number line is. You have to know the players. If you don't understand who's out in the playing field, then it's really hard to say, I'm going to do it differently, if you haven't listened.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like, and how, like, something that I would wonder from your perspective is like, how does growth, it's like growth, again, in the spirit of like, when you're ready, growth is good. When you're not, it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous to your team. It can be dangerous because you're not ready as a leader to lead through growth. It's kind of a weird thing to have to think through, like that can be challenging, because there's more pressure. You got VC money, coming in. The pressures are higher, the stakes are higher. You're delivering product, people are on salary and payroll, and like there's a lot sort of moving parts. How do you protect that? Like, the early days, you hear a lot of times people talk about that, even, Intuit and stuff, like, oh, the early days, when it was like this, it's like, and yet you're scaling, yet you're growing. Like, how do you lead through growth in a way that brings others along, like carries your team? Everybody grows, everybody's elevated. Because I've definitely seen it in toxic ways, where growth kills the team, kills innovation.
Yeah. So I think there's different kinds of growth. You look at the VC world, and there's actually a really great graphic. It's in the book Scaling Up. It talks about the complexity that comes out of adding people. So let's see, do we get a blip in our internet? Cool, we're back. I think I had a blip.
It's a little busy.
But so like in Scaling Up, there's this concept about complexity when you add people. So if it's just you and me, it's 1, 2, right? 1, 2. If you add a third, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the touch points are exponential and maybe even factorial, right? When you add a person, you add 4, it's even, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just goes up and up. And I don't think people understand the impacts of adding just one more person and what it can do to actually slow productivity, and create some frustration because people don't know what they're doing. And so I think there's the growth in like employee count, and there's the growth of like complexity that we think is necessary for revenue growth and for effectiveness growth. Obviously in the tech world, there's a lot of VC money that you need to use at a certain speed. Like, if you don't burn it fast enough, then you won't get more, which is just right. When in business has that been like a thing? And it's relatively new, I think, where it's just like tons of money thrown everywhere. We'll just see which horse sort of does the best, and then we'll put more money there. And the only way you have a chance to do the best is if you just burn it, like on stuff, just try stuff. Well, that's pretty hard on culture, which I know you have spoken to me about, and Adam Metcalf has spoken to me about it. But I think you have that growth thing where the complexity grows, but it outpaces the revenue. So the revenue doesn't come from a growing team. like let's say it this way. A growing team doesn't necessarily mean there's new revenue, but I do think if you're growing from new revenue and you add in people as new revenue comes, I think that changes the growth paradigm a little bit. This is something I've been kind of thinking about, and I kind of told myself that I don't want to hire. I don't want to hire for growth. I want to hire because we've grown. And I think that's a slower kind of way, but I think it's a less chaotic way to think about growth. Because, I mean, you just think about it for a second. Like, if you bring a bunch of new people into a room and you don't quite know what you're doing, everyone's like, what should we do? And everyone's like, I'm not sure. And you're kind of like, what do I do with my hands? Like, I'll do this thing over here, and I'll just move this thing around for a while, and everyone's like, oh, cool, you're doing something, and it's like, and then you get stuck doing it because you always have, but whether it needs to be done anymore is hard to say, whereas when you've grown and there's a clear need, like, it's the same as a product, right? That's the funny thing is, like, you provide a product where there's a need. We'll provide an employee where there's a need, right? Without a clear function, like what they're supposed to do, it ends up eating a lot of resources trying to figure out what that person's going to do. But if you've grown and everyone's kind of busting at the seams a little, and you're like, oh, we need someone, and I know it's a little different in the VC world because you go pre-revenue and you do all this user-based valuations and stuff like that, so I know it is different, but for the average person, 99.9% of people, like, I think we try to hire more often and sooner than we should, like, we think we
got a principal element of like hire slow and fire fast. It was like, get toxic people. I think, whether that's right or wrong, it's like, I think a principle in my life that I've used too is like, and this is outside of business, but just not much has gone well when I've moved fast. I think there's this illusion that, well, go fast, don't die. It's a little oxymoronic here, but
no, it's true.
Most doesn't go well when I move fast. And which is why I really value like intentionality, and I value sort of like those that I don't know, have more of a principled approach to growth. Versus, fast growth, and sort of a chaos that comes with that, versus an intentionality that comes with embracing longevity, the long journey, having a longer outlook on things. So yeah.
No, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, say that again, like your experience with things moving fast, like not much. What did you say?
For me, in my experience, most things haven't gone well when I've done them fast.
Yeah. Yeah. So in applying that to standing out and being different and positioning and things like that, I think it's important to have a method to thinking about how you fit in. Like the process of you guys getting in the car and pretending like your baby's in the back seat and driving up, like that took time. So someone had to think of the idea. You had to do it. You had to then debrief on it, talk about those 9 touch points. Like that wasn't fast, but it actually creates more momentum when you have a method to user journeys and input and things like that, and observing. Like you can't listen faster than a person's doing, like you can't observe faster than someone to observe moves, like it's impossible. Like, and so that's good. That's really good. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. We have, it's like, no, never mind. I won't go there. I was going to like pivot, but
yeah, no worries.
Yeah, man. Good stuff.
That's sweet. Well, maybe tell us a little bit about what you've learned. You've gone from like startup to then like, I guess 200 person startup kind of, then got I don't know how long T-Sheets have been around standalone, but to then being acquired and being in this like, a behemoth of an organization in comparison, I guess.
Intuit bought us. We'd grown up to about 400, and then Intuit acquired us. Now 10,000. now we have MailChimp and Credit Karma and a lot of really cool teams and companies. So
I didn't know. I don't think I knew MailChimp was under you guys.
yeah, we just bought them last year. So
Okay, that's cool.
acquired MailChimp and really trying to move to being the center of small businesses. So we're moving from, you know, the books for your small business to the center of your small business. And really, really awesome stuff by leveraging the ecosystem of QuickBooks and MailChimp and TurboTax, and because we own TurboTax as well. So it's really a cool ecosystem. But yeah, you know, it's interesting. I don't know if this is relevant for a standout, but I guess just a part of my individual journey. But it's like I'd spent, you know, a decade in ministry, well, at that time, I guess 5 years in a sort of business startup, and learned some things. Both, I realized that I was kind of odd in that most things don't work out that you build. And for whatever reason, I got lucky, and I consider it very, very lucky to be a part of 2 things that grew, you know, fast, grew big, grew fast. I learned a lot. And I think in that season of my life, I was ready for I was ready to like take a little bit more of a principled approach to what I was looking for as far as an ecosystem and the team I was around and those that I was partnering with, what leadership development looked like. And I was really interested in like team development and leadership development and business strategy. And one of the questions I was coming with is, anybody growing fast and doing it healthy? And that was like the curiosity that I was trying to like find, like, because most stories are horror stories. You know, we met a guy when we first got out to San Francisco, and met a guy at this coffee shop. And I may have told you this story, but
yeah, let's hear it. Yeah,
in his 60s, maybe even 70s, but we had just gotten there and we were super excited. We got our VC Series A, we closed. You know, Zimi was moving and shaking. You know, we thought we were taking over the world, and you know, we're just young, and again, you're trying to navigate the growth and figure it all out. And I just asked, like, what advice do you have for us just getting started? And I expected some like formula, some strategy, some guy to connect with something. And he said just don't ever or he said, enjoy the journey and don't ever stop. And if you ever stop enjoying the journey, it's not worth it. And, you know, this individual had gone through a couple marriages and had strained relationships with his kids. And it's just, I've never forgotten that. You know, what does it look like to grow? Because I think anything that's not growing is dying. So growth is healthy, but what does it look like to grow healthily? In a way that's sustainable. Again, if you have a long outlook on life, a long vision, a long play, what does that look like to do it well, to do it healthy? And so I was really looking for leaders that were demonstrating that. And I actually made a keynote spreadsheet of these principles and values I was looking for. Anyways, I found some guys, I found some people, and they were at this little startup called T-Sheets in Boise, Idaho. And so came and joined the team and really enjoyed the journey of building T-Sheets. And then now, you know, we're into it, and I've since moved on in the org, but yeah, it was a really cool journey into Intuit. Intuit's a super fascinating company. I think we were just ranked top 10 places to work in the world. And as in terms of like, not only from just the way it is to work there, but also from the impact and the process that we go about in building out what we're building. So
that's cool. What from your perspective, what do you think sets Intuit apart? Like, what do you think, how, obviously, like, the bigger you get, the more general, like, you just start doing all these things. But like, if you were to say, like, what's you know,
a lot of people have asked that question.
Cool.
And one of my favorite ways to answer that question is I'll butcher the actual article, so you can actually find this, but there was an article somebody wrote a few years back, and it was, why is Intuit not dead? And the whole argument was like, it's accounting. Like, how is like not all these other companies like completely eliminated Intuit, or whatever. And they wrote a follow-up article, and it was simply titled, I think, why Intuit's not dead. And they had done a bunch of investigative like journalism into like process, and talking to, at that time, our CEO Brad Smith, about Intuit's process. And it really came down to one thing, and that was what we call our sort of secret sauce at Intuit, which is design for delights, D for D. And it's just our branded version of design thinking, but it pulls from, the likes of IDEO, Stanford, design school, and then just market like trends and learnings, and really consolidates into this process and framework for how to stay customer obsessed, how to experiment, or how to go broad and go really narrow, and then how to rapidly experiment your way to there. And the way that sort of manifests itself in a massive company like Intuit is we're constantly disrupting ourselves. So we're constantly starting the thing that would take us out. Let's go like learn and adapt and try to disrupt ourselves. Like, if I was to start a company right now and eliminate this part of the company, well, how would I do it? And then we go learn, and again, we start with customer, and we stay obsessed with customer, and we iterate. And so really, it's really about kind of our process of design thinking.
That's cool. I love this phrase. I think it was about the companies that really last in Silicon Valley are willing to eat their own lunch. And I don't know, I guess you're in Boise. I don't know where, is that the headquarters of Intuit, or
headquarters in Mountain View, San Francisco.
Okay, so yeah. Well, and I think it's just kind of cool to think about. And you see, one of the best examples I have, because it's so renowned, I guess, is you see a company, you see Apple develop products that cannibalize other products, and then they do another product that cannibalizes that product, and so they're more willing to eat their own lunch, so they're willing to sacrifice revenue streams for others. And there's another saying, it's called jumping the S curve, and I don't know if I have a pin right here, I could draw it, but it's kind of a cool philosophy where you basically let's see here. Yeah, let's try to draw that. So anyway, you basically start growing, and before you start maxing out, you hop down and you start innovating so you can outgrow it, so you're willing to sacrifice the top end when you see it starting to level out, and you're jumping the S curve. And I think this is a picture of eating your own lunch or cannibalizing your revenue, and being willing to be like, what would the customer want? Maybe not now, maybe in a year, even though they don't know it. Another cool example of that is, I just heard this story about Blockbuster. They were unwilling to do what Netflix was doing as far as subscription goes, and kind of that whole path, because 12% of their revenue came from late fees. And so they were unwilling to sacrifice their late fees for a model that didn't have late fees, and then they died, So you're willing to hold on so tightly to this construct of like the way revenue is made, and yet the customer changes and innovation is there and disruption. And, I think Nokia is another classic example, #1 phone maker in 2007, and then what is Nokia, like it's insane. So that's cool. That's really cool to hear that you really see, and by eating your own lunch, you have to do it. It's contingent on knowing the customer and iterating rapidly and doing that broad to go narrow, so you can take in all the different options.
And when you start with customer empathy, it's really important to not fall in love with your solution. And I think that's where a lot of businesses get it wrong is, again, they're in love with their sermon. They're in love with their product. They're in love with their idea. It can be great and noble and missional, but if you're not willing to adapt and flex and change, I mean, Zimi, when Adam and Joanna and I started it to where it is today, is so different. The mission is the same, the sort of spirit is the same, but if you're not willing to adapt, but the only way to adapt is if you're ears to the ground, you're listening to the customer, and you know, but a lot of times, like, one of the things I work with new designers that I hire is teaching them how to fall in love again with the iterative process, the process of rapid experimentation. Give me 20 prototypes and then go test those with customers, and 20 more, like, and we'll iterate our there, and then we'll release like these releases, and then you're using data to make actual decisions. You're not just leading with your product. We have this method called LOFAs, leap of faith assumptions. And these are like the riskiest assumptions that, if not proven true, will make you fail. And they're a great thought exercise to run through, where you really think about, and we challenge people to not think about them in the language of, like, a lot of times you'll see a loafa like, people will buy my product, you know, like that's the loafas, like the assumptions of, no, that's not the assumption. They're not gonna, the assumption isn't that they'll buy your product. The assumption is that, like, you know, they're willing to pay X dollars to, you know, get a paycheck early. They're willing to pay $100 extra to get their paycheck early. Like the loafa isn't that they'll buy your version of that. And so you really try to understand, like, what are the risky assumptions that we need to go out and experiment with, and then you use rapid experimentation and good, like, experiment hypothesis frameworks. It's sort of art and science sort of collaborating, and the beauty of iteration that gets you there.
Yeah,
it's not easy. But.
So yeah, Adam took us through a design thinking workshop a few years ago, and so LOFA is probably the most common thing that has kind of injected our culture on a regular basis. When
really?
Oh yeah, we talk about LOFAs a lot now. And
wow.
It's funny, we've had to teach other people how to do it, and it's kind of hard to teach them.
Yeah.
And what's cool though, so you know, when you do the T-chart, you taught us, you know, like what's critical, not critical, what's proven and unproven. And you got to get it right, otherwise it's all jacked up. But anyway, what's cool is you give everyone an opportunity to throw all the loafas out. You know, and so they're thinking of really dumb ones, like the ones that really don't apply, but you just give them the time to do it so they can just write it down. And then you're like, is this critical? And is this unproven? Have we never proven that this would work? You know? And they're like, oh no, we have proven that, because they bought this for $20 and it's the same thing. It's like, okay, so that's proven. Then everyone's kind of part of it. And it's just the coolest process, these leap of faith assumptions. And I just think it's really cool. And we even us though, still, we don't use it enough, but at the same time, like, where they can become critical is when you're quote betting the farm, you know, like if you're betting the farm and you're going to invest a ton of resources into something that you'd rather find out earlier that's not going to work, you know? Yeah. So if you can go test those loafas, those assumptions that are critical, you know, it's a huge deal. Your story about Airbnb, you know, I think about all the time. Like it's really, really cool. So anyway, those of you that don't know, check out how Airbnb tested and prototyped. And I think there's a number of articles that talked about the fact they rented out their own rooms and they had air mattresses. That's what made Airbnb it was air mattress. So it's super cool. So,
and then when they were failing and making no money, they made cereal boxes and they funded their next round. Have you heard about that? How they built the Obama O's and the McCain Flyers airplanes?
Was it Airbnb or was it Lyft?
No, that was Airbnb.
Was it? Okay, that's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyways,
that's wild.
It's all about, it's like, I think in all three of sort of, when I look back on that journey, it really is like process should serve the team shouldn't serve the process. And I think when you get that wrong, that's when growth is dangerous. That's when growth starts to damage a team. You know, you and I were talking yesterday about like books, you know, chew on what's good, throw away the rest, like move on, next story. And I think, you know, process is important when you think about starting a business. And a lot of founders don't know what they're doing and business owners, which is fine. It's like great, like you're entrepreneurial, you're getting out there.
That's a feature, not a bug. It's just part of it.
Totally. And you know, I've always thought of myself as I don't know if you're familiar with the leadership framework, primary and secondary leadership, but I'm a secondary leadership trait, which means I love to take ideas and help bring them to life, go from 0 to 1. A lot of idea people don't know how to get from 0 to 1. They've got the idea and they can sustain the vision and sort of help build the team and culture, but they don't know how to go from 0 to 1. And so, but it takes process and efficiencies and design thinking and anyways to go from 0 to 1. And so that's like the theme when I look at Element to Zemi to now is really how to build systems that serve the team.
Yeah, dang, that's awesome. Well, I think kind of to I know you gotta bug out here shortly, but I think to kind of go back to this concept of complexity and what does growth actually mean? Growth in people or growth in revenue, and how do you do these things? Because you need one, or you need one to get the other, and so forth. But I think when you get to a spot where the team is serving the process instead of the process serving the team, I think that's where you get like bloat and you get complexity and you get like, what are we doing? Because like why do we meet? When you lose sight of like, why do we meet? That's a bad thing. And some other, we could go on and on, but I think another important thing that I've learned is just keep as few people in a meeting as humanly possible. Like more people in a meeting is almost never the answer. Like, it really isn't. So,
well, because what that ends up being, one of the biggest dangers facing into it is you start to have meetings for meetings. You have meetings about meetings that you're going to have in the future to make a decision about something that needs to come out. You're just like, no to all of that. So we really are trying to have a ruthless process in thinking about, exactly that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to share this story, and if you had any thoughts, because it kind of ties into a lot of the things we're talking about. I haven't shared this on Standouts yet, but on our business card, I don't know if you can see the pattern at all. Can you see that pattern?
Yeah. Oh yeah, in the background. Yes.
Yeah. So it's the reason we put that on there, other than the fact that I just think it looks cool, is it's dazzle camo. And so this dazzle camo is a reminder for me that without innovation of your company, like you won't make it. And positioning to me is a lot about innovating the way you communicate and innovating the way that you deliver a product. And the dazzle camo was like invented. And there's a great Vox video that shares this if anyone wants to check it out. And if you want to check it out, Adam, it's cool. It basically shows the history of it was you had these ships in World War I that were being taken out by submarines. And instead of, and the reason they're being taken out is because these periscopes would go up to see the heading, adjust or see where it was headed, track for the speed, and then they could send a torpedo out and take it out. Well, they didn't know how to defend that. There wasn't the technology to defend that. And so they started painting the ships in this way that you couldn't tell which way it was headed. And you actually can still see this today in concept vehicles. When concept vehicles are out on the road, they actually will cover the car in this dazzle camo to obstruct the way you can see it. So they don't give away the vibe of the car, basically. But anyway, they did that for a while, and it would cause the enemies, the way the story goes, to miss because they couldn't get the heading quite right,
Wow.
And so, however, in time, sonar was invented. Well, sonar doesn't need to know, doesn't need to look through the periscope and see the way you're headed. Like it just knows where you are. And so eventually it didn't work, and they stopped doing the thing. But I think that's true with any kind of innovation around positioning, because it doesn't last forever. Positioning, a new position, a differentiation. I always say that success breeds copycats. And so, when your company, when your company's successful and maybe has the upper hand, that's why you got to eat your lunch. That's why you got to stay close to the customer. That's why you got to, innovate and create things that other people want to create to disrupt you, and this dazzle camo on our card as a past strategy that no longer works. Like no one would paint a warship now to try to avoid being hit by something. It's just the most insane thing ever. But like as a reminder that it's like you can't sit still. You gotta be thinking about the way that you're perceived by your customer. And when you miss that, you become a Nokia, you become a Blockbuster. They just weren't positioned for success. They were positioned for an old customer, for an old market. So.
Yeah, that's so good, man. And that takes hard freaking work. It's not easy, and not everybody's willing to do that.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It's hard work. And if there was formulas, then everybody would be doing it. So it's like, it's not formulaic, but there are principles, to your point, of staying close to customer, eating your own lunch, like iterating your way there, building a high performing team. Like there's principles that'll definitely deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool, man. I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I really appreciate you jumping on, and it's been really fun to catch up, and it was cool to talk Zemi a little bit again, and
Yeah.
it's just really neat. So I really appreciate our friendship, our relationship. It's been an awesome journey, and so anyway, thanks for joining, Adam.
Yeah, let's do it again. This will be fun.
Let's do it. Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, tell Amber hi.
Yeah.